Let's sing Sanctuary. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. I hope you pray this, and this is a prayer for you as we get started with this retreat as well, or this conference. Lord, prepare me. Here we go. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. You can go ahead and be seated, and we are going to watch a video at this time, all right?
And then you get into silly arguments when you're married. Silly. We were 3 months before we had our really first big blowout fight. This was our first big one. It was over a roaster chicken. Tiny little, greasy little bird about that big. I'd gone to take a nap. I didn't know any better. I really didn't. I learned early on naps were a huge mistake in my home. God forbid I'm rested, really. It's so much harder to manipulate a well-rested, rational thinking human. People are so much more compliant when their eyeballs are burning out of their skull, you know? I have no idea. I don't know if it was her upbringing or not, but people, when she was awake, you're awake. I mean, it's... So, now I don't know if I was asleep 5 minutes or 5 hours. I'm waking up to the sound of a vacuum cleaner in the bedroom. I'm sleeping and my wife is choosing to vacuum the bedroom. Apparently, that wasn't waking me up fast enough. She started to go under the bed. We had a water bed. There was no under the bed. Again, I'm stirring, but not quite awake. She went after something on the pillow. I have no idea, but I can tell you what she got caught. My hair in the attachment. Now I'm awake. Whoa. To this day, that was 28 years ago. To this day, her reaction still surprises me. Oh, you're awake. Good, the chicken's done. You'll have to back up. I think I missed something. She said, no, you said if I cooked the chicken, you'd carve it for me. Then I said the dumbest thing a married man can say to his wife. I looked her right in the eye and said, I never said that. Cool. If you're a newlywed in this room, take my word for it. If your wife said you said it, you said it. Don't even go down that road. I'm telling you, their ability to recall every last piece of verbiage that ever entered, exited out of your lips is amazing. And there's no end to it. It just goes on and on. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. That's not what I said. That's exactly what that's not what I said. What I said was I'm going to take a nap. If I'm awake when your chicken's done, I'll carve it for you. I didn't tell you to come in here and suck my brain out of my skull with the vacuum attachment, drag me out of bed. I didn't tell you to come wake me up. I'll pause here while you all choose a team in this discussion. I'll tell you how dumb I was. I thought that was the end of that discussion. I made my point, I rolled over, I turned my back on my wife. Whoa. She gets on the bed with both knees. Get up. You said you'd carve the chicken. Get out there and carve the chicken. Every man here knows there comes a point in every one of these discussions you have to change tact. Obviously, what you've been saying is not registering, so you just come up with another way to say it. I don't know how to carve a chicken. I never carved a chicken my entire life. Why don't you carve it? You can mutilate the bird just as easily as I could. She says, I don't know how to carve a chicken either. Now, you said you'd carve the chicken, you have to carve the chicken. You're not going back to see if you carve the chicken. Hear what I said? I don't even know what this is about. Lord help me. I just want to sleep. God help me. All right, I'll carve the stupid chicken. Now, I'm walking to the kitchen to carve the bird. I'm not even married 3 months. I'm a mumbling idiot. I don't even like chicken. You want chicken, you want Kentucky Fried Chicken, for God's sakes. They'll carve it up for you. What'd you say? I didn't say nothing to you. Now I'm in the kitchen, I'm in my underwear, I got stuff in my eyes, I'm not in a good mood, got a knife, I got a fork, got a greasy bird. In comes my wife, who not 2 minutes ago just told me she didn't know how to carve a chicken. Well, apparently there was a chicken carving class somewhere between our bedroom and the kitchen. Oh my gosh. Every man here knows what happened next. 2 small hands appeared out of nowhere. You're doing it all wrong. Let me show you how to do it. You got it over here. I stabbed the bird. Now I'm waving at her with my fork. She grabs my wrist. Give me the bird. Oh, no, you're not getting this bird. Give me the bird. Now we're standing in the wrestling over this stupid. Give me the bird. No, you give me that bird. I'm not. And at one point she goes, go back to sleep. Oh, I'll sleep like a baby till you run a jackhammer. Give me that bird. And I yanked on it, and the bird flies up in the air. And it was like in a movie. It was like a 1.5. I'm watching it. He goes, one, lands right on her head. Boing. Both of us look down on the ground, and we look at each other. Grease is running down her face. She says, I can't believe you threw it at me. I didn't throw it at you. Yes, you did. 28 years ago, to this day, we'll be at parties. Like at a fundraiser where we don't know anybody, and I can always tell when she's telling her version of that story. Because at one point, 6 women in a circle will all turn around and glare at me. In her version, I whipped it at her skull at 100 miles an hour. A bone could have broke off and went through her temple and killed her on the spot. And I would have never met my grandbabies.
Okay, well, Brother and Mrs. Rabon, why don't you come up? And of course, oftentimes, just silly arguments. Anybody ever had a silly argument? I've had many times where it's like, what did we start talking about whenever we get into that? So we wanted to take some time tonight and just get to know Pastor and Mrs. Rabon. And they've been married for 41 years.
No, we're only 35.
They're only 35.
She was 3.
So what I've done is I've asked them some questions, and I want them just to kind of share from their hearts. Take maybe a minute or a couple minutes for each one of these. And here's what I want you to do is basically think about and listen to what they're saying. And I'm sure that a lot of these questions are things that will help you. Certainly their answers, their experience. None of us have arrived, and so this is a time for us to glean from someone that has not necessarily been around the block, but has been around the block, all right? And so the first question is, how did you guys...
She was chasing me the whole way.
That's right, yeah. So start with this first question, because my wife, this is her favorite question to ask when she meets somebody is, how did you meet, and when did you know that he or she was the one?
Our stories will vary. Will differ in how we think about it.
Right.
We met at youth camp.
Yeah, we know when we met.
Yeah, we no doubt we met.
We were at youth camp. We both grew up in a small country church, and so in our area, several churches came together and went to camp. They had not done that for many years. That summer, I had just turned 16. I started preaching when I was 15, and so I had turned 16. Sharon was 13. She would turn 14 a couple of weeks after camp was over. And we were standing in the registration line on Sunday afternoon. And back then her hair went way down below her waist. And I thought, that is the prettiest girl I've ever seen. I bet you she'd love to meet me. And so there was another preacher boy that was right behind her in the line. So I went up like I was wanting to talk to him. I could care less. He was in the world, really, to be honest about it. But we started talking, and of course I made the suave move and invited her to sit with me at church that night. And before the week was over, we were going to the bonfire service on Friday night. Glory to God.
Before the week was over, he thought he knew I was the one.
Yeah.
But I was young, right? And so when my mom let me date, my mom and dad let me date because he was a preacher. Well, I wanted to date everybody, so I did. And so he chased me the next couple of years to ball games and to everywhere, and we had this little preaching stop.
So you were a stalker?
I was a stalker.
Okay.
But we didn't know there were stalkers back
Yeah,
then.
he was a stalker.
We had no idea. We didn't know we'd get on Lifetime Movie Network. Or anything, so.
He lived
You
out
know-
in the country. We lived out in the country, and there was this little the four-way stop that nobody. It's very country out there, and every time we would go out, he would get his Bible out at that stop, and he had what the Lord told him about us. And so anyway, finally, I wasn't convinced until the summer before my 11th grade year of high school, and it was a youth camp again. And I really think that's my salvation date now. And then I came up from the altar. Guess who prayed with me? Ta-da! We don't do that these days either, do we? But he came right down and prayed with me. When I got up, I knew the Lord had just answered a lot of things. I was kind of rebellious, and it
That's true.
And you know what I like is they're both smiling when they're telling this. It's something that they haven't forgotten. And I think it's good for all of us to think back to when we met. And maybe for some it's maybe better thoughts than others, but it should be a special time when you first met. And so the next question is, what do you think is the most challenging part of being married?
Living in the same house. I heard a preacher say one time he'd been married probably about 40, 50 years, I don't know. He said, my wife and I have never had an argument in all of our married life. And I wanted to say, why don't y'all live together? You know, I thought I was really not spiritual because we had an argument probably that day. But anyway, most challenging.
Well, I think it's staying in my lane because as a woman, we do a lot of things. You know, we operate the house, we manage things going on, we're doing this, and this, and we're keeping it going, and then the kids come along, and we're doing all those things, we're keeping it going, and the husband walks in the door, and we're like, okay, yes, sir. You know, it just doesn't work like that. And it's hard to get back in your lane. So to me, it would be staying in my lane.
So after all these years, for you guys 41, and of course even before that, before you got married, what would you, looking back after all these years, what would you have done differently?
Well, I mean, if I was being completely honest, okay. I heard a politician say that one time. But anyway, if I was completely honest, we probably shouldn't have started dating as early as we did. Our children used to throw it in my face. We got married. I turned 20 July the 11th. We got married July 27th. Sharon turned 18 August the 16th. So she's 17 years of age, graduated from high school. We grew up, like she said, rural. So, you know, in Alabama, if you were 17, you were probably an old maid. And so it was between my sophomore and junior year of college. If I had to do it over again, you know, I may not have started dating as early as we did. You know, the Lord was good to us. We didn't have a whole lot of parameters placed on us, but we met each other at the marriage altar, virgins. It was only the grace of God, really. So I would probably have allowed her to at least gone a couple of years of college before we married, but
He just couldn't do without me.
I didn't want to live in the dorm another day, praise God. So
I don't know. As raising the kids and going through marriage things, you know, sometimes we want things to be perfect. And just striving to have everything just right. And this is the Pinterest world we live in today tells you that. You know, your house has to be perfect and everything has to be just exactly right. And I think I would stress less about those kind of things. I know I remember taking our first child out of the crib due to peer pressure. He slept all night, he did all these things, but what did I do? I felt that pressure because, oh my, you know, and oh my, that was a bad move. So I think I would stress less and try to own those things a little bit more.
Okay. So in your marriage, when you guys disagree, how do you handle it? You ever disagree?
yes, a few times.
Not always well. I mean, we're human too.
Uh-huh.
And I think it depends on the stress level where we are in that day. Have you ever felt like the world's against you, And then, who are you going to take it out on?
That's right.
Always the one you love the most.
And Sharon and I don't only live together as husband and wife, she's my secretary. So we work
pray for
together.
me,
We
Jay.
work together the few days she comes to work every month. We work together.
He's talking about me. See? Stress level.
Tuesday's my day off, so we take off Tuesday, and she takes off Wednesday to keep our grandkids at home so their mothers can work. And
Yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah. So I think really I don't always handle it well, but sometimes I retreat. And that's not the right thing either. But there are times when we just talk through it, and that's the better day, and that's how it's supposed to be. Fighting fair, right? Instead of blaming.
Yeah.
The blame game. You don't win. I don't win. You don't win. It's very selfish.
So as time's gone on, and of course we have some younger couples, and some of us have been married longer. How have your priorities changed over the years, or have they?
I would think that we do more things together than we've ever done because of just the two of us. We're empty nesters. We have 3 grown children, 8 grandchildren, and so I would think we do things together. I have a session, and I don't think I'm doing it here, but I may bring part of it in, but I believe life's all about relationships. I believe if you were to define life in one word, you'd define it in the word relationships. And so my number 1 relationship is with the Lord, being the person he wants me to be. Number 2, partner with Sharon. Number 3, parent with my children. Number 4, papa to those 8 grandchildren. Number 5, pastor. So those relationships all want a different spot in life. Sometimes that pastor in number 5 wants to take the place of number 1, or particularly when you've got children in your home, if you're not very careful, that parenting will overtake that partner relationship, and you'll devote all your, I used to hear about people getting divorced after 20, 30 years of marriage, and I used to think, that is about as crazy. I think, Sharon and I have been married 20, 30 years, I'll just begin to getting her trained correctly. And why would they do that? But
Back to question number.
but the reason is because people take their focus off of their partner, put it on their children, and then they're strangers in the house. And, I would think, we have the privilege now to travel. Sharon, she just, like I say, you'd have to know our upbringing. You would probably call it backward. And, so as long as our children were in the home, she never traveled with me internationally. She just didn't want to go across the ocean. If, they need one of us, we both gonna die.
Like God couldn't protect me.
But
that's just how I feel, right?
Yeah, so.
The world is smaller than it used to be with all the media.
So.
Yep.
But, I try to follow the same priorities that he has. I think he does his because they're P's. I'm like, I thought he wanted to be a papa. Now I think he wanted to be a P, right down the field.
I just didn't want to be P pastor. That's what some of our children discussed. We're going to call you P pastor.
The P. But, if when we keep those priorities in balance, just check your priorities sometimes. Just write them down and see. And when the children vie, they vie for first place for me. Because they're my blood. You know that, ladies? Your children are your blood. Your husband's not your blood. But your children are your blood. And we have to keep that balanced. And then those grandchildren remind you so much of your children. And that's a lot of my life, and I love that. But I truly do not love it more than my husband, so I have to keep those priorities balanced. And it's a daily thing. It's a daily reminder.
Yep. So a lot of our families, just like us, we have a place that we call home. It's the house we live in. There's a difference between a house and a home. And so when you think about your home, what is it that makes your house a home?
I would think, number one, it's the Lord. We've centered our family on God and His Word. We never forced made our children, but all of our children in ministry. Both of our sons serve on my pastoral staff. Our daughter's married to an associate pastor, lives about an hour away from us. But we were all about serving the Lord, and we always serve the Lord together. When I joined the staff at our church 39 years ago, I was the bus director, so Sharon took a bus route. After 5 years, I became the youth pastor. She went on every youth activity. We took our children with us, except for overnight trips. And then when I became pastor, she came and became our ladies director, and then eventually my secretary. I had another secretary at first, but she, because of health reasons, had to quit. So, but I think what made our house a home is, number one, the Lord. Number two, love. You ought to, number one, love your spouse, and your children ought to know it. I grew up in an expressive home. Sharon grew up in a non-expressive home. Her dad's in heaven now, but I remember her telling me, because I thought every Christian home was like mine. Okay, so after we got married, I remember her telling me one night, I know my dad loves me. He was faithful to my mom. He's worked hard. He's provided for me. She said, I've never heard him tell me. I can't remember him ever telling me. Well, I can't ever remember leaving the presence of my parents, even to go across the street and play, that my mom or dad didn't say to me, I love you, son, be careful. Okay? So that's the kind of expressive home I grew up in. She didn't. So we determined that, our children are going to know that we love them, and our grandchildren. And because our kids are close, we have the privilege to have a good portion of them in our home at least once a week. We eat Sunday lunch together. Sharon cooks, which I'm glad that's the meal she cooks every week. So, but anyway, and so we, I would say the Lord in love.
Yeah, and I would say as we've gone on more, and our children have become adult children, it takes a lot of work to keep your house welcoming to your family to come back in. So we do. We have set times, and Sunday lunch is always that. There are 2 set times a week I keep the grandchildren and do things. It's not easy. It's easier to say, oh man, I don't have the energy anymore. And I'm not saying if you have a health problem, you should do what I do. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying you have to step out there. And with my daughters-in-law, I always think, do my daughters-in-law and my son-in-law feel like they can come into my house and it be lived in, clean, and welcoming to them? And if it's not welcoming to them, it's not the way that I want my home to be. So things like pictures, and things like that, I want to make sure their pictures are up very well. And it takes a lot of work to balance that and make sure they have the same amount of pictures. And, my house shouldn't be a museum. It is a little bit in some places, because you're like, oh, that's my babies. But what about them? And I believe the home coming back in. For instance, right now, they're not into candles because of the natural oils and all they do. You know what? I don't burn candles when they come over. Why? Because I don't want that to be. It's
no carcinogens.
No carcinogens. And so, as far as that kind of thing goes, normally I would have said, oh, Sunday night fellowship, you come light the candles, you do. Don't do that anymore. Why? Because of my in-laws, my children coming back home, to make it home.
I know it's always a challenge, like Joy and I, when every day you face challenges. Some of you are working, some are working from home. And it's easy with things that happen in life for either one or both of you from time to time to get discouraged, get a little down. Think about the Bible. The Bible talked about David and how people spake about stoning him And the Bible says David encouraged himself in the Lord. What are some ways that maybe you encourage each other?
Go ahead.
Want me to talk
Yeah,
first?
go ahead.
Well, my husband's language is words of affirmation. Now, I don't think that I do it nearly as good as it needs to be done, but I know that. And I try to say those words as encouraging. You know, it's easier to find fault, isn't it? Instead of, because I married my opposite. Any of you marry your opposite? I mean, I'm not just a male, female. I'm telling you, we are opposite in what we do. And so I try to encourage him by going with him places. He likes me to travel with him even if I'm not speaking. And he wants me to go. He wants me to listen. He wants me to be a part and help. He wants me to work with him at church and just be right there. And so I try to do those kind of things. Be a part of his
If
life.
you follow the love languages, hers are quality time and acts of service, so, you know, I'm not much of a housekeeper, but I have, especially since we've been empty nesters, you know, I try to do things around the house, like I've learned how to make tea, and I'm very proud of myself for making tea. And,
He
you know,
knows
just,
where the pots are now.
yeah, and I cook my own breakfast, and because
Cereal?
no, eggs and turkey bacon or turkey sausage.
He does that every morning.
She's not breakfast.
We've never eaten breakfast.
No,
and he
we're
became
not
a
we're not
diabetic,
breakfast.
and we wanted to have and I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, I thought I was eating very healthy cereal. My doctor said, no, that heart health cereal is no good for you. Too many carbs, you need protein. So anyway, but anyway, you know, you make some adjustments in life, and I want to keep her encouraged. You know, if she's my greatest cheerleader, so if she's not in my corner, you know, I'm defeated. I'd admit I'm very much a person who responds to words.
So, you know, you've heard, they've already mentioned a couple times, and a lot of times we don't think about it, but, you know, there are stages of life as we're married, the longer we're married, and of course he's used the words empty nesters and so on, but there's other stages that you go through, and I think one of the keys, and they haven't used the word, but they've been talking about, is that we need to be constantly assessing where we're at in our marriage, you know, because things change, we change, and so you have to constantly, just like at work, you know, if a boss does not assess his business, chances are he's going to go out of business. He's constantly has to look at, is he making money? How much money is he spending? And so on. You need to do the same thing when it comes to your marriage. Is there may be times as you get older that your wife may need more support from you than she's ever needed before. There may be times where physically you're not able to do as much as you've done in the past. And so there are ways that you can encourage. And listen, honestly, sometimes when I come home, I can tell my wife likes the carpets vacuumed, she likes the dishes done. And if I see her in there and I see those things, listen, it doesn't take long. I just go in there and I do the dishes. Now, I don't do it all the time. Probably should do it a lot more, but there are ways you can encourage each other. One of the things I think that is one of the biggest strains on marriages, couples, is finances. I don't know if you want to talk about it in regards to where you are now, or maybe something that you can share with these couples, even some of our younger couples, on how do you make the finances work? How do you handle that?
I'm the financial person. Every couple has a financial person, okay? It's not always the male. Finance is one of the things I deal with in premarital counseling, because the subject I'll speak on tomorrow night, communication or the lack of it, and finances are the main two reasons for conflict and contention. I've never seen anybody have my money and your money, his money, her money, that's ever made it, because when you divide it, it never's divided correctly. You know, he pays the car payment, she pays the insurance. Well, I just want you to know the insurance is $50 less a month than the car payment is. So every couple like that, and we do marital counseling together, okay?
I gotta fight for that woman.
Yeah, she's got to give that woman's perspective. So, but every couple we've ever dealt with, it just doesn't work. Now, I know there might be some second marriages toward the end of life and those kind of things. I've dealt with
That's
those too.
different, sure.
Yeah, but, you know, the old saying, keeping up with the Joneses, I tell premarital couples, listen, your mom and dad didn't get where they are overnight, and you just need to take it easy. Credit is a wonderful servant, but it is a terrible master. And, you know, I use credit cards. I'm not if you're a Dave Ramsey fan, don't shoot me or anything, but I think he probably uses them too. But anyway, but I use them for Sky Miles and Marriott points and, you know, those kind of things. So we travel a lot of times on stuff that I pay it off every month. I do a lot of dumb things with money. Sharon says, you know, when you die, I want you to know I'm not going to do all this stuff you do. I move money from bank to bank because I get better interest at one bank I can the other. So, you know, just a lot of.
Don't worry about that dollar.
Just
simplify your life.
She doesn't care. But anyway, I think you gotta make sure that you make wise financial decisions. And whoever is the financial person, just like this, in every couple here, there's a spender and a saver. And that's not always the same either. Okay? But in every couple, there's a spender and a saver. God put you together. Everybody marries their opposites. If you married the person just like you, you'd kill them. And so, you know, so balance those things, you know, and make decisions that don't put you at risk of having to work 2 or 3
Just
jobs.
say something on that.
Yeah.
I stay out of finances because it is not my gift. My gift is swiping that American Express if I need it. That's my gift. But let me say why I can stay out of finances. Because first of all, I know my husband is going to tithe first. And every year he is going to go above the tithe and he's going to up our offering to the Lord. A little bit more percentage. And I promise you, men, that your wives will appreciate that if you are in charge of the finances. They're going to trust you more. And wives, if you're in charge of it, men, you trust them with that because God is going to honor you if you give to him off the top and then train your children to do that. That's a whole session, but we did do that. And finances started at just the ground level. You know, one of our sons made $15 when he cut the grass for a yard, but you know what he got? We laugh now, but Philip literally made $15 for this huge yard. $750 of it went in the bank. 10% went to tithe. It took him a long time to save money. But you know what? That's the way it was. And if you'll do that when they're young and you'll do that in your marriage, the other things are just going to start.
And the reason we made our kids save is because they went to college. We were going to help them pay for it, but they were going to assume responsibility. So I heard a guy talk about this when we didn't have any children, or if we did, Tim was a baby. And so we started off a 75-25 proposition. We paid 75% of his college bill. He paid 25. Next year we paid 66. He paid 34. The next year we went 50-50. And the last year I paid 25. He paid 75. Working him toward financial independence. I didn't do that because I hate him. And of course they said, you know, our sister will never do that. She's the baby. And she crammed 4 into 3 so she could get married. And so she said she'll never do it, but she did it. She did it every.
All but just a little bit.
Well, I gave her a rebate or two.
And then he wrote this note at the end because she felt guilty, and it said, "Joy, you are paid in full." With yada yada. It's really a sweet note. I'm sure I have it in the attic in her keepsake. I'm sure I do.
So what are some, you know, there's always challenges to protect your marriage. So what are some boundaries that you guys have established, whether it's early on or even recent, to protect your marriage? Because, all of us, there's the bombardment, and of course, the devil doesn't want marriages to last. What are some boundaries that you guys have established?
I mean, just some practical things I do. I do travel some by myself, so if I go in a hotel, I find Fox News and ESPN. That's the only two channels there. I don't ever surf. I'm not a channel surfer. I'm a channel surfer at home. If we're watching live TV, I don't know commercials. My boys say, "Daddy, you seen that latest guy cut?" I don't care about commercials. I don't want to see what's happening in the whole wide world during that 2-minute commercial or 4-minute commercial, whatever it is. And so, but that's just a practical thing. I don't let ladies grab me by the arm and squeeze my arm and talk to me. I back up from it. I'll even pull away from it. So,
We don't close the door. We don't go out to eat with the opposite sex.
yeah.
Things
Never.
like that. We don't do those kind of things. We tell each other if we get, even if you've gotten a junk text that came in and it was not appropriate, tell your mate.
Yeah.
That way you are, they're not gonna find it one day and you're backing up saying, well, I didn't know it came in, or you look guilty, even if you didn't mean it. So just go ahead and clean it
thing
up.
we've done is we've had no secrets.
No.
There's nothing that I don't feel like I don't know about her, and I don't think she would tell you there's anything she doesn't feel she knows
I
about
don't,
me.
we tell what we need to tell, or what we should tell. We don't hold secrets.
So what would you say has been the most joyous occasion or day that you've experienced as a married couple?
Today.
I think the births of our children,
Yeah.
because, I thought of a lot of things, because I put some thought as we went through these things, but here's what I thought of. The birth of our 3 children. Every one of you think like that if you've got children, and maybe the husband and the wife. The first day that we served in the youth ministry, it was a joy to serve a teenager. And I think we would both say the first day of the pastorate, I was struggled somewhat with that, but he would say the first joyous day probably, because that's what the Lord had called you to do. But those kind of things, they're so joyous. The day our children got saved, there's so many. And the day our grandchildren call us now, and whether we're with them or not with them, and they've gotten saved, and I keep that list in my Bible of their name and the date they got saved, a little note about where they were when they got saved, and just little things like that. They come back to my mind and they bring me great joy.
Maybe the most precious day in my life, that when I think about all that, our daughter, we were with her when her first child was born, a boy. And when the second child was born, we were in couples retreat, 3.5 hours away. We knew she was getting close, and our couples retreat, like yours, starts on Thursday night. So I really didn't know what to do. We had these guests in, this pastor and his wife from Illinois, and so anyway, we drove separately to couples retreat. We'd never done that before, and just trying to figure out what to do on timing. And so Thursday night, probably about midnight, I reckon, our son-in-law called, and he said, we've been admitted, Joyce, in labor. Well, what does Mom do? She said, I gotta go.
Right
I
then.
said, let's think about this. Let's figure out what to
Nope.
do. She's not gonna have this baby in the next 3 hours.
I didn't care. I already thought about it.
But
That's why I drove.
anyway, the first one had gone a long time. So anyway, I said, she said, no, I'm going. I said, okay, you go. And I sat there in the hotel and thought, this is crazy. So I called her and I said, listen, I'm about 30 minutes behind you. And I said, I'll just call another one of our guys on staff and say, you run it tomorrow. We probably be back tomorrow night. Maybe. We'll see. And so when it got near time for the birth, I was fixing to dismiss myself. And my daughter said, Daddy, would you like to stay in here and just be up at my shoulder? I never thought I'd see another live birth, you know. And I said, "Are you serious, Joy? Are you sure?" She said, "I'm sure. I'm sure." So, so our last two, she's had our last two grandchildren. So I got to be in the room with both of them.
Those are precious times. Well, we've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and of course appreciate you sharing some things from your heart and some great advice. If there was one thing that you could share, any advice to these couples on how to make their marriage last, what would you say to them?
I would start off with unconditional love. Love your mate unconditionally. I think that's what's got us here, is unconditional love and trust. You know, if you don't have those two things, your foundation is really weak. You've got to love each other. You've got to trust each other. I use it with our grandkids all the time with the bears, they bears, but trust is something that it's hard to put back together once it's broken. And it can. But if you've got a foundation of trust, don't break it. It's not worth it. That person that may be out there, you know, showing you love and attention, you know what's going to happen when you get with them? It's going to have some mundane days as well. And once you get started in that, I'm sure in a group this size, there's probably some brokenness and some hurt and some second and third marriages maybe. You start where you are now, and you love that, whoever you're with, right now, unconditional. And you talk about trust and make sure you trust each other. Just make sure you're in God's perfect will. If your mate says something about God's will, and you say, well, I'm not leaving my job, or what, just think about that. Work together in that. Love, trust, and God's perfect will. That's what I would say.
I would go back to something you mentioned earlier, and that is the stages of life. You know, make adjustments. Sharon's told me many times I'm married to my fourth wife now. Same woman, just a different, you know, she's just different than she was. And she was a 17-year-old kid. You wouldn't want to say that, but she was a 17-year-old girl. We got married. And so you just be willing to make adjustments and accept the changes that life brings. Don't allow those changes to change your love for each other.
Well, let's thank the Ravens for sharing some of their